Through the Gates is produced under the support of the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management to enhance, promote, and defend the North American model of wildlife conservation and responsible wildlife management. That's our mission. We're engaged in fighting at every level so that wildlife management remains science-based and conservation continues to work for our wildlife. To learn more and join the movement, visit SaveTheHuntColorado.com. The North American model of wildlife conservation is the greatest conservation model in the world. It's a success story that should be shared and celebrated because everybody is a part of it. Well, we've got another episode of Through the Gates to Save the Hunt, and we are in the, spring, winter session still. General Assembly, legislature's going on, a lot of things going on at the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission. And we are continuing to try to figure out how to maintain some relevancy on the landscape. And the guest that we've got today is a friend of mine that we've garnered a friendship over Proposition 127. It's Kody Lostroh. And Kody is a world champion bull rider and also a houndsman and business person. I think he raises bulls and does a variety of things. Father of multiple barrel racing girls and a photography-based wife. But Kody, we appreciate you taking the time today and introduce yourself. Give us a little bit of background of who you are.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Dan. You kind of summed it up there. I got a lot of irons in the fire still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. But yeah, I grew up, born and raised here in Colorado, Longmont actually, which doesn't really look like a cowboy town nowadays. But back when I was growing up, there was a lot of rodeo there, and we raised cattle and horses and everything growing up. Always into hunting, and actually my dream was to be a trapper. I was just ate up with it when I was young. I wanted to go to Alaska and just live off, live in the most remote country I could. Obviously, the trapping deals kind of got shut down here in Colorado. And so at that time in my life, I just kind of switched gears. There's famous rodeo in Cheyenne, Wyoming, the Cheyenne Frontier Days. We're all around here familiar with that. But for those that don't know, very prestigious, very, old rodeo that's been around for a long time.
Was it the granddaddy of them all?
Yeah, the daddy of them all. Mm-hmm. And at the time, when I was growing up, there was a famous bull rider that rode there and got killed, actually, Lane Frost. Mm-hmm. And I had a tape of the Cheyenne Frontier Days from that year, and I'd watch it over and over and over, and I really liked bull riding. And so my mom signed me up to ride a steer at our county fair there, the Boulder County Fair, when I was 6 or 7. I know she lied about my age to get me in there because I wasn't quite old enough. But I got on the steer, didn't have a clue what I was doing, and I fell off like expected. Mm-hmm. But I just thought it was the funnest thing I'd ever done, and kept up with it, man. Just like most sports that kids do, you don't know what you're doing, but you're having fun. And eventually, I got pretty darn good at it and was able to make a career as a professional. And went on, and that's all I did for a living for my whole life. It's provided my family with everything we have, and even to this day, I get to coach a team of bull riders for the PBR still, with a newly formed team league. And so, I don't know. It's just that part of my life just kind of always fell together, and it's something that I really enjoyed and really put a lot of effort into being the best I could at. But along with that, hunting and even fishing and outdoors life, it has always been a big part of what I do. It's who I grew up as. Mm-hmm. And so the connection, between Colorado and rodeo and Western life, it's hunting, all of it is just kind of all, I guess the pieces fell together. It
kind of blends into each other, just because of the type of lifestyle that it is. But it's been it's eroded and degraded over time just because of population growth and the human side of things in Colorado, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. The landscape, even where I grew up and the whole state in general, does not look like it used to. There's just a whole lot more people and a whole lot less of that, our roots that you see out there on a day-to-day.
Mm-hmm. So you also raise bulls, correct?
Yeah, we raise bucking bulls, just kind of a natural transition that bull riders end up in. I don't know what I was thinking, but we do it. I do enjoy it, though.
How many bulls you got now?
At the moment, I just weaned calves, so we've got about 40, 45 calves right now. About half of those are bulls, and then I used to have about 80 bulls around.
Really?
Yeah, and then I just got to where it's hard to get them bucked. Really, there's not as many bull riders around as there used to be, and so I try to sell them young now, and it's been good. Just creating a breeding program. That's what I really like, is the breeding side of things. Bucking them is really fun. But they get old and big, and they start tearing stuff up and ticking you off. And
well, you see some of these videos of some of these other bull riders, and they got these pet bulls that follow them around. They scratch their heads and stuff. But those didn't always used to be pet bulls. But they could still, even that, they could be cantankerous at this point in time.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of those bulls get like that when they've been around and they've been hauled and they've been across the country. They learn their job, and they learn that, hey, like, I kind of like these people. They feed me, they scratch me, and they still do their job. Though they'll get your ass in the dirt.
I don't have to be a bastard all the time. I just when I got a flank strap on and I'm out in the arena.
Yeah. It's really cool to see their personalities come out like that.
When you were growing up, you did Little Britches rodeo?
I did, actually. I was the Little Britches world champ.
Really?
Yeah, 2003, I think.
Yeah. Okay. And then how did that transition into other things through like high school? And then was there any college or anything?
Yeah. So I rode in high school rodeo, won the state 3 times, and I was a reserve national champ 1 year. Won the Little Britches world title. And then I did go to college, actually. I was kind of a tough deal. When I went to college, I had a goal. I wanted to go to the college finals and the PBR finals in the same year. Well, I got into college and started rodeoing in the PRCA, and I was winning Rookie of the Year in the PRCA after our winter break. And I went back to college, and I was like, I could really do something else with my life right now than to be stuck in a classroom. So I ended up quitting college, and I was going to go rodeo because I was winning Rookie of the Year. Well, then I got in the PBR, and I was winning Rookie of the Year in both places. And at the same, at that time, there was really no comparison. The PBR was so much better. Bulls, money, competition, and it still is.
Compared to PRCA?
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, PRCA is still great, but you just had a higher concentration of really good bulls and really good riders in the PBR. So I was like, well, I'm going to do that. And so that's kind of the path I took, from high school to college to professional.
When did you start in the professional ranks?
2004 was my first year. I went to a couple events at the end of 2004 because I just turned 18. And then 2005 was my rookie year.
And then you won in what year?
I won Rookie of the Year in 2005 and then won the world title in 2009.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So it was, it's a fun transition to kind of look back at all that and realize how quickly it comes and goes, because it's a young man's sport.
It's an eye blink, isn't it?
Yeah.
And when did you retire?
I retired in 2018, officially. 2014 was my last finals. Beginning of 2015, I had kind of a crazy deal happen where I had my balance, eyesight, vision, everything fell apart like instantly. I just rode at a rodeo in Oklahoma, and we were driving back home, and I told my buddy, I'm like, I don't feel right. Like something's wrong. And so I pulled over to this gas station to get some coffee or something. Opened the door and fell out of the car, and I was stumbling around the gas station and running into stuff. Like, to look at me, you'd think I was just hammered drunk.
Really?
And I was like, you got to drive home. I don't know what's wrong with me. So he drove home, and I got home and slept for nearly a week straight. Like, I'd sleep for 23 and a half hours a day. I'd wake up and eat, go to the bathroom, go back to bed.
Did you have a head injury?
Well, originally they thought I had a stroke. And so after, a week, I finally went to the hospital. Probably should have done that a little bit quicker.
After a week.
My wife's like, you've got to go. I'm tired of you sleeping all the time. So I went, and they're like, well, we think you had a stroke. So they did all these tests, and unfortunately it wasn't a stroke, but then they didn't know. They're like, well, maybe it's a concussion related deal. So they started testing for, different things with my brain, still come up with nothing. And then they're like, well, we're going to try to get you into these specialists. Anyhow, long story short, it took about a year and a half, 2 years. They finally found a tumor in my neck that was wrapped around my carotid artery. Mm-hmm. And it was pressing on nerves. It went to my eyes and my tongue, and then choking down quite a bit of blood flow to that side of my brain. So that's where all this crap was coming from, and it was like just 2 years of feeling drunk nonstop. Really? Yeah, that'll make you never want to taste alcohol.
Did you ride? Did you ride during that time?
I tried.
You tried.
I tried. In typical bull rider fashion, I'm like, I can do it, right? Mm-hmm. Like I don't, and
you can power through it.
Yeah, I couldn't see crap. Like I had nystagmus in my eyes, so I'm not sure if you're familiar with what that means, but they're just shaking and they won't stop. And I couldn't see more than 10 feet in front of me, probably. I mean, see anything, even at close distance. Everything was shaking and blurry. Couldn't ride a horse, couldn't drive a car or nothing, but I thought I could ride a bull. I'm like, I can feel my way through it. You know, I'm tough. And it did not go well. I got on a couple practice bulls. I think I rode one of them, but it was chaos. Like I got off upside down, landed on my head, you know, didn't know up from down. And then I entered Denver, the stock show, and drew the best bulls that I'd ever drew at Denver. You know, that's usually kind of a hard one to draw good bulls at. And, I drew good bulls, and they did handle me, and I realized, okay, like, this isn't going to work. Mm-hmm. And I did know it at the time. You know, every day I went to sleep, I thought, when I wake up tomorrow, I'm going to be good to go. And so for years, I just thought I'd get it back together.
And that was from what year to what year?
That was 15 through most of 17.
Really?
Yeah. And then when they found that tumor, they took it out. And when I woke up, you know, my eyes weren't shaking. I could talk better, all the things. And, boy, I thought I was back. And so I went to riding again and did pretty well, but I just couldn't keep my body together at that point. My eyes still didn't work quite right. And, you know, I just getting myself in bad predicaments riding. So I just kind of realized, like, I think that's it.
How many bulls did you get on from the time that you were in high school to the time that you ended up retiring?
Oh, thousands.
Yeah.
Thousands. Yeah. I think I had 1,100 professional outs.
Really?
Yeah. Throughout, like, you know, 2004 to 2018, and that's most of them. The website that kind of keeps count of all that stuff, they used to not keep count of all of them. So yeah, I mean, that's a lot of bulls.
And how many times did you get hurt during that time?
I have no idea. Too many to count. You know, they have a saying, if you're going to ride bulls, you better have a short memory. And you know, anybody that's ridden for any amount of time can write you a book about how many times they've been hurt and what happened and this and that. And, you know, you just kind of gloss over it like, yeah, I broke my back twice. And yeah, I've, you know, done this, punctured lung, yada, yada, yada. And it's like, you just forget about it and move on because you don't want to relive that stuff. Exactly. That stuff sucks.
Exactly. Yeah, I wasn't near of your caliber by any means, but I rode bulls in junior high school, and then didn't go to college, but I did a few years of bull riding for like amateur stuff.
Oh, no kidding.
And when I was in high school, I actually grew like 7 inches and gained 30 pounds over the course of a summer, and you know, just growing up.
Yeah.
And it was like I had vertigo. I mean, my center of balance was not what it was prior to that.
Yeah.
And I wasn't ever fabulous. I was decent enough to run some buckles and won some money here and there.
Yeah.
But once I grew, it was like putting an elephant on top of a bull. I mean, it was just there was no coordination and no center of balance that I could keep, and all I did was get hurt.
Yeah.
And so I can only sympathize with somebody that's done it and rode thousands and thousands of bulls, because I probably on my total career was on a couple hundred, and I hardly ever got hurt to start with. But at the latter part of it, it was every single time. It was just, you know, you'd pay a $75 or $150 entry fee, and it was a $4,000 hospital bill. And so I sympathize. But I envy the hell out of you because that was something I wanted to do. I wanted to be a trapper like what you talked about. Well, what am I now? I turned out to be a trapper. But to be able to follow in the footsteps of a lot of the guys that I was riding with, I was never at the caliber of what they were. I was a good joke to take along, and I had good money because of job, and we could share expenses. But that was about the benefit that I provided. So.
Yeah, and were you like your height that you are now back then?
That's what I grew to.
Gotcha.
I went from like 5'6", 5'7" to 6 foot, and you know, I shot up above half of the guys that I was riding with, and they said, well, you need to try saddle bronc, or you should try bareback horses. Well, I tried bareback horses, and I was lanky enough that it didn't look bad when I rode good, but I was so screwed up and hurt from the bull riding that I didn't look very good very often. So, but it was part of your young man style that you think you could turn around and do anything.
Oh yeah.
10 foot tall and bulletproof. I was 10 foot tall, but I wasn't bulletproof. So, but you traveled around the world. Did you ever ride out of country?
Yeah, I did. So I rode in Australia, Mexico, Canada, Had a couple opportunities to go to Brazil, which bull riding is huge in Brazil. The biggest rodeo in the world is in, I'll butcher how you're supposed to say it, but it's Barretos. However you say that in Portuguese and make it sound like it's supposed to. But anyhow, each time it come around, I was hurt or something, and I didn't go. And I'm actually coincidentally going to Brazil next month for a combine to look at bull riders for my team.
And going to that, so the team that you do is actually out of New York.
Yeah, yep, they're based out of New York. They, the PBR team league formed basically to try to further the sport, right? Like, it's been an individual sport forever. So when they decided, all right, we're going to do this team deal, they're trying to do it just like all other professional sports, have, drafts and trades and all this different stuff. And so a lot of our bull riders come from Brazil now. And, my job as a coach is obviously to help them guys ride better, but it's also to find the talent and try to keep improving our roster of guys. So that's what this trip to Brazil will be for.
How many guys are on the team?
We typically have 12. There's seven men on the protected roster, right? So those are the guys that, they're locked in. And then we've got 5 guys on the reserve roster, which those are like the alternates, right? If we get some of our main guys go down, we can bring up some reserves. And the reserves, not that they're not bad bull riders, they're great bull riders. It's just, there's just some nuances there on that end of things where we can have this amount of guys protected and then this amount of guys on reserve.
Do you guys have like free agency and that sort of stuff and trades and drafts, or is it similar to like most of the other major sports?
Yeah, exactly. We've got all that. We're in a period of free agency right now, and then we'll have our new rider draft in May. And then that's when all the new guys, you have to come through the draft in order to do this. Yeah. So everybody that comes through the draft and either doesn't get picked or they get picked and dropped later on, they're free agents.
Okay.
But any new guy has to come into this new rider draft.
What are the average ages of your guys?
Oh, I've got a pretty young team. I was with a previous team that was based out of Oklahoma for 2 years. I was assistant coach for them, and then got hired as head coach for this new team. And so when we had the expansion draft, every team could protect a certain amount of riders, so they were totally off limits. And so we went through and picked, who we could off of these other teams. And I got a really good, talented group of young guys. Our average age is probably 20.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, we've got a 19-year-old kid right now that's a stud. Or no, yeah, he just turned 19 maybe. 18, 19. Just fresh out of high school last year. He's a stud, Hudson Bolton. He's just one of those freaks that can do anything he wants to do.
Really? Mm-hmm. So when those guys are coming up, do they have aspirations to do just PBR, or can they do PBR team, or can they do PRCA and PBR? Yeah,
the fortunate thing about the bull riding world is everybody's still independent contractor, and technically even with the team thing, they're signed to contracts, but the way they've gone through the legal stuff, they're still independent contractors.
So they could do their own stuff, but I imagine there's insurance policies on these guys like Lloyd's of London or whatever.
Yeah, they're contracted to ride for us, but they can still do other stuff outside of that.
And so when you guys do as well as what you just did, you guys did very well in the circuit for that team circuit, correct?
Yeah, it was a pretty decent first year. We won our home event in Brooklyn, which that was kind of cool because going to Brooklyn, you don't expect a bull riding crowd there.
Yeah.
And those fans were awesome. Best fans, hands down, that we had all year.
Really?
And they probably didn't have a clue what they were watching, but they had a good time. It was just, they booed the other teams, and they'd scream for us and just had a great time.
Do they understand that the Bulls are getting scored too, or do you know?
Oh, I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. They show up and buy a ticket and have a good time. That's all I care about. But
what sort of crowds are you riding in front of?
Pretty good crowds, We've got all these stadiums around the country. They sell out Madison Square Garden every year.
Really? Mm-hmm. And how long has the team circuit been going?
The team circuit, this is our 4th year in that, and it's grown tremendously every year. They sold 6 franchises and kept 2 league-owned franchises, and then I'm trying to think, the 3rd year? Yeah, so it was second year. They sold those 2 league-owned franchises And then the third year, they sold 2 more expansion franchises. And then they're talking about selling 2 to 4 more here pretty soon.
So just real briefly, I mean, give a rundown on a team deal. Is it each guy get to ride 1 bull per event, or is it scored in aggregate, or how does it work out? Because I think a lot of people are used to going and watching bull riding, and the guy gets bucked off or he doesn't, and then he wins or he doesn't. How's the team concept work?
The team concept is pretty cool, and it's pretty simple. It's 5-on-5 head-to-head. So one team will go against another team. Each of those teams will ride 5 bulls each, and the highest aggregate score wins. And so, say you ride 2 bulls and the other team rides 3, well, then they win. Or say we both ride 4, now the highest score comes into play there. Total score.
So is there just 2 teams per event?
It's been 8 teams per event, 4 games per night. It's weird calling them a game when you're talking about bull riding, but it's 4 head-to-head matches.
Oh, okay. So
then you get your 8 teams.
And so the average person that goes to a team event can see 20 to 40 bull riders, or what is it?
Yeah. So if they're 5-on-5, so that's 40 guys, and they're about to make it this next coming season. There'll be 5 games each night, so that'll be 50 guys a night.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, it's a heck of a show.
That's several hours.
Yeah, it's typically like a 2-hour show, 2.5. They're going to have to do some logistics, figuring out how to keep that time, in that zone with adding a few more riders this year.
Do you see the audience continually growing for that?
Yeah, the audience has been great. Every year since they started teams, the audiences have been growing and getting bigger. And, Nashville's always a really good event. Brooklyn was great, obviously. But, some of these places that have, like touristy towns, kind of college towns, stuff like that, that just have a lot of people around that are into that sort of entertainment atmosphere. Mm-hmm. It's grown exponentially, and they may not. I think what you're seeing is guys or people that don't necessarily understand bull riding, but they get behind like a sports team and they have something to represent them. Brooklyn had a team to represent them, so they showed up and had a dang good time.
So they wearing cowboy hats and boots and stuff, or they just show up?
No, just show up.
Yeah.
You see, especially in New York, you see all different types there.
Oh, I don't doubt that a bit. And so the sponsors, that comes into play on the team level too, or is that for individuals still?
Yeah, on both levels. There's still a lot of sponsors on the individual level. It kind of ebbs and flows with different sponsors that are around. I had my primary big sponsors. I had just 2 my whole career. I had Enterprise Rent-A-Car for half my career, and then DeWalt Power Tools for the second half. And that's like the primary. I had a lot of secondaries that kind of come and go. Mm-hmm. One that was with me from beginning to end was Wrangler.
Really?
They were always really, really good. But on the team side of things now, I think the sponsors are seeing more benefit from more guys, right? Because you could sponsor, a guy for X amount of dollars, or you could sponsor 12 guys on a team for X amount of dollars, and it might be a little bit more total money, but your price per man and hours on TV or minutes on TV is going to be a lot better priced.
How's things changed since you got into the pro circuit now, money-wise, for the participants? I mean, everything else goes up, but I would just have to think that bull riding has gone up exponentially as well.
Yeah, the prize money's been really good. The PBR was that was their dream, right? Where guys could make a living doing what they wanted, and when they retired, they didn't have to go push carts at Walmart.
They're raising bulls.
Yeah, they're raising bulls. Should have gone to school more.
Well, as long as it doesn't hurt you now anymore, you don't have to worry about it as much.
Yeah, you would think, but sometimes I still get run over.
Oh, I bet.
But no, the sponsor dollars have gone up. I'm shooting from the hip a little bit. I don't have the exact number, but I think I want to say I saw that last year they paid like $27 million to the bull riders. Yeah.
So that's a pretty good purse.
Yeah, and granted, there's a lot of people, and it's performance-based, right? Mm-hmm. So your winners, they're going to get the lion's share of it. And the world champion, in the individual season gets a $1 million bonus. So that's huge. I mean, that's the only place you can win that.
So when you're on a team that does, and I'm trying to get into this for myself and the audience, but when you're on a team the team then provides a lot of the cost of things to like get to somewhere and the lodging and everything else, or is it, because they're independent contractors, they're pretty much on their own?
Yeah, so they walk a little bit of the line there legally. The guys still, provide their own way as far as travel and stuff like that, but the team contracts do provide some bonuses to them, right? So whether it's a signing bonus, a ride bonus, performance bonuses, whatever they are, that's all negotiated between the team. So, your upper end riders, they got a little more leverage, and they can say, well, this is what I want, and if you want to keep me here, this is what I need, and if not, I'm going to go into free agency and see what I can get. Anybody in PBR that does PRCA stuff or other rough stock events? Yeah, there's some guys that do both. To make both finals is tough. It's a lot.
Oh, I bet.
I mean, you're talking a guy that just stays on the road. But there is guys that do both, and there's a guy riding right now, Sage Kimsey. He's a 7-time PRCA world champion, and now he's kind of dedicated himself exclusively to the PBR, and has done really well there too.
Really,
and so it takes a really dedicated and ambitious guy to do both. But if you want to win, you can go do it.
And these guys are looking at stuff. I mean, I know how young guys are, but do most of them last 3 years, 6 years? You got guys lasting 10 or 12 years? Yeah,
so a long career in the PBR, or really the bull riding world in general at the professional level, a long career is 10 years.
Yeah.
So you get a lot of guys, 5, 6 years is kind of it. And then you've got your other end of the spectrum. There's been some guys that rode for 15, 16 years. Mm-hmm. And my theory behind it is you've got X amount of years in your body, right? Before it breaks down too much. You can't do it anymore. And the guys that start riding bulls a little bit later in life tend to have those little bit longer professional careers because they didn't come in with quite the beat up body that
they weren't getting crushed at 8 or 9 years old.
Yeah. I mean, it makes a difference. Like we always kind of thought, the younger you start, the better you get. And I do still believe that you can develop quicker, but physically you're crippling yourself a little bit by starting too early.
Did you ever ride any other rough stock?
I never did ride any other rough stock. When I went to college, I was gonna ride some bucking horses, and then at that time I'd screwed up my shoulder. Like right as I got into college, I'm like, all right, I don't really want to get on those bareback horses now with a messed up shoulder. And I don't know about saddle broncs, man. Putting your feet in stirrups on a bucking horse on purpose.
Yeah, they tried to get me to do that stuff, and I knew some really good saddle bronc riders, and I'm like, no.
Yeah, they say it's the hardest one to learn, but the easiest to get. Like once you got it, it's the easiest.
That's what they kept telling me, but I never had enough ass in my britches to try it. So.
I think it's a lie. They tell everybody just to get new guys to try it.
Yeah. So let's transition into, when did you start getting into hound hunting?
Yeah, so I grew up with hunting dogs. When I was young. We raised Chesapeake retrievers for waterfowl. And we hunted some upland game with them too, but that was kind of the thing, right? Like my dad was into it, and then I just got into it too. So growing up, we always had them dogs, and then when I got off on my own and started raising bulls, I always raised cattle dogs. And so, having them working dogs has always been part of my life. And then I'm trying to think, in 2008, I got a phone call from one of our a bullfighter that was sponsored by Gunworks. They used to have a show called Best of the West.
Yep.
Do you remember that?
Yep.
And I think if they still have it now, it's Long Range Pursuit.
Yep.
Yeah. And so he called me and he said, hey, we got this TV show, this elk hunt. We're going down to New Mexico. They need another guy. Would you want to come? So I was like, yeah, I'll go. We went down on this elk hunt and had a good time. Well, the lodge that we stayed in, they had a photo album of all pictures from all throughout the years, and I got to looking at some of the lion hunting photos, and I thought, man, that looks like a good time. I think I'd like to try that. So after our elk hunt, I went back down there by myself and went on a lion hunt with this outfitter. And man, we didn't even catch a lion, but I just thought it was the funnest time. Like I just loved the dogs, obviously, because my background in them, but also everything that went into it, and seeing that, like, it's not a slam dunk. Like, you're going to work for it. And so the competitive side of me, I guess, is like,
I want to do this again.
Yeah, I'm going to come back and I'm going to win. And so I came back again the next year and we ended up catching a lion, and then I was kind of hooked on it, man. I was still riding bulls at that time, so I didn't want to. I knew what working dogs take, right, and I didn't want to be split time wise and not have enough time to devote to those dogs. So I hunted with buddies that had dogs, for quite a few years. And then when I officially, retired from riding, I was like, that's a whole nother story about how they kind of saved my life. Really, I was in a pretty rough spot mentally when something I devoted my whole life to
was gone.
You were
done.
Yeah, and I didn't get to pick how it ended. It got picked for me. So, anyhow, like I said, that's a whole nother story. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get me some hounds now and go do this. And man, it really gave me some new purpose and some new life to pursue something that's difficult, that I'm passionate about, and I don't know. It really kind of saved me. And that was in 17, I guess. So nearly about 10 years after I'd gone on my first lion hunt.
So
I finally got my dogs.
between the first time and then in 17, when it sounds like you got your dogs. How many hound hunts did you go on in that time frame?
Oh, a bunch.
Did you?
A whole bunch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was something you really it just stuck with you.
Yeah. It was, it just transitioned into that. When you like something so much, you don't just want to do it once. I had buddies that had dogs, and so we went and kind of learned a lot of what I know from that time in my life, and that's probably the best way to learn, because I didn't have to go home and feed them at night too.
It's like grandkids.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, transitioning in from waterfowl dogs into something and stock dogs, and then going into hounds, that's a completely different thing, but there's a lot of similarities. But from a hound side of it, what kind of dogs do you have now?
So I run mainly walkers, and they're crossed up, fairly unique, the kind of my strain. Not a lot of guys up in the northern half of the country use. So that's about all I can say about them. They're just a little different strain of walkers.
Are you when you hunted with these other guys? Is that what they hunted with, or you just kind of lucked into these types and found them that I kind of like these better than the other ones?
Well, that was the nice part about hunting with different guys before I had my own dogs, is I could see a lot of different dogs work and be like, all right, I like this style, I don't like that style. And it's just like all working dogs, you're going to have different styles of dogs in different breeds. And so I got to see a lot of that before I got to have my own. And then I decided on what I wanted, and then went that route.
So you got how many dogs you got?
At the moment, I've got 10. 3 of those are pups.
And you probably see some traits in dogs that show individualism, like with a specific bull rider, or you see dogs that like to work in teams, like what you're doing on the team circuit, and explain how that relationship kind of plays out with the dogs. And of course you have to be able to pick that out and figure out what dogs work good with who, and if they actually can sit in the box together, and if they can be kenneled together or whatever. How does that work out? I mean, to me, it looks like it's similarities to the bull riding deal, to where you find out this guy can't room with that guy, and this guy needs to work behind. I mean, I'm just prophesizing here, but explain how you actually get into that with the hounds.
Yeah, just experience with the dogs, and you nailed it on some being more independent and some more team minded. That's a whole nother rabbit trail. Like coon dogs have been bred specifically to be independent, and they want to have their own track. They want to do their own thing. They don't want to play with the team. And what we do with big game, with mountain lions, you need team players. You don't want that dog wanting to go off and do his own thing and find his own track. So, you tend to see that pretty quick. There's dogs that like to be involved and dogs that want to do their own thing. So those independent minded dogs, they definitely can still hunt and they're still great, but they just not what I want for my pack. And then, you see when that pup is aggressive over food and stuff like that, you got to watch it. Like that might be that might be an issue to watch out for, because that's another thing we don't want is growly dogs. They are in such close proximity to each other all the time, whether it be in the box or in the kennel or even at the tree. they got to get along. You don't want a bunch of teenagers wanting to fight each other and not keep their mind on what the job is.
If people have questions, and we're going to dig into a little bit of this, the lion hunting and the big game hunting side of things, but if people have questions or concerns or consternation about the way hounds are raised and why they're raised for what they do, how do you explain from your perspective to the unknown, to the layman that just comes in and goes, I don't know anything about lion hunting, but I think what I've been told is that's inhumane or that's cruel. Give me a 3-minute soapbox elevator speech on if I was asking something to that, how you would answer it.
Yeah, well, the basis for what the dogs do is because they've been bred to do that. Like, that literally is what they live for. It's no different than me when I live to ride bulls, or when, this kid lives to play football or basketball or whatever it is. This person loves to make money and they're really good at it. Like, we've all got some sort of drive and something we're passionate about, and that's literally what these dogs have been bred to do, just like a cow dog, a racehorse, anything like that. And the relationship between them and the game they catch, they're not out to kill. They're out to do what they're bred to do, just follow their nose. And as they put pressure on that animal, it rises up into a tree. And that's something that has been going on, in nature forever. You can see, cats climb trees, bears climb trees. Why did they do that? To get away from something that might make them feel uncomfortable. But there's nothing in my mind, and I've seen it, is why I can be so confident about this, is there's nothing inhumane about that. Like, that's been happening in nature and with the history of mankind. If you look at hunting with dogs, has gone back. There's cave paintings of hunters hunting with dogs. Like, that's the most basic, primitive way. Like, if you want to talk about tools that have given us an advantage over time, dogs is not one of them. That's been around forever. Which is like,
when Native Americans had the horse introduced, it's a tool. It's a mode of transportation, and it's a part of their livelihood. The difference that I think when the general public looks at things is they have this unknown perspective, or this demonizing perspective that's been given to them. They don't know it for themselves, but they've been told that, houndsmen and dogs are big, bad, mean, they're cruel and inhumane. And I've been around hounds all my life. I've never owned hounds, but because of my background and what I do, there's dogs that I like, and there's dogs that I don't like. But the overwhelming majority of the people that have had hounds that I've been around, just like stock dogs or anything else, guard dogs, they're part of the family. They're part of people's their circle. For what you have, your dogs are probably an average, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. But if you have them from a pup, a lot of times you'll have it till that dog dies at your place, or it gets old, just like any other dog at any other level, whether it's a stock dog or a retrieving dog or a pet poodle or whatever. It becomes part of the family.
Oh, 100%. It's almost difficult how close they become to the family. Everybody knows, like, everybody owns pets, and when the day comes that pet has lived out its time on this earth, it's hard. And hunting dogs, working dogs, hounds, they're no different. You get to know their personalities and everything about them, and you live with them. And I think, this is just my opinion, but when you're out on the landscape on your own feet, and over the years you've gone hundreds and hundreds of miles sharing an experience with a dog like that, there's a lot deeper connection there than an average house dog. And I'm not downplaying the relationship with anybody and their average house dog. I'm just saying, I've been through so many things with my dogs that I would consider them like family, like legitimate family. And there's just no other way to put it. Experiences the same way with these bull riders in the locker room. The things we faced together brought us closer together. And granted, dogs aren't people, but the experiences are very similar.
If you want to support a company that supported the efforts to defeat Proposition 127, then you need to support Davis Tent. Davis Tent has provided quality canvas goods for outdoorsmen for the last 50-plus years. For more information, go to davistent.com. If you want to support another business that was instrumental in helping us defeat Proposition 127, check out Salida Gun Shop. Salida Gun Shop in Salida, Colorado provides quality products, expertise, and knowledge from individuals that actually do what they sell. Go to SalidaGunshop.com. Listen to the advice of Cameron Haynes and support companies that are supporting your cause and your efforts. Minturn Anglers is one of those companies. Minturn Anglers provides product and fishing excursions in Colorado and are second to none. For more information, go to MinturnAnglers.com. People say you shouldn't use tracking devices or shock collars or training collars or whatever you want to call them. What's your first notion to turn around and go back on them with that?
Well, tracking collars, people don't really understand, right? They think GPS collars. And what do you know about GPS? Every place I'm at in the world, this GPS knows where I'm at because you got your phone, you've got your vehicle or whatever it is. But our tracking collars, there's two things about them. One is they don't communicate from the collar to the satellite back to me. That's not how they work. They communicate from my handheld to the collar through VHF frequency, which is just like your regular walkie-talkie. It's limited, right? It doesn't go forever. It doesn't go around the world. Terrain features, canyons, ridges, mountains, trees, rocks, all that stuff. Severely limited. So you don't always know where your dog is unless you're out there with them, right? You have to be in somewhat line of sight. So that's the first thing I like to explain to people, just so they understand how it works, right? It's not, you don't get to turn your dog out in Georgia and fly to California and think, oh, look, he's right there.
Yeah.
That's just not how it works.
Yeah.
Typically half a mile, 3/4 of a mile max in the mountains. If you're on the flats, it's, totally different. But so first thing, I want people to always understand like how this stuff works. It's not what they understand as GPS on their phone. It's a little different. But the biggest thing of it, like the point is to know where your dogs are, right? But you got to think of the reason why do you need to know where your dogs are. When you're hunting, there's a lot of different things you need to be aware of, especially when we're talking about these dogs that we've just got done speaking about. They're like family, right? Family. We care.
You don't want to lose them.
No. And, way back when, before this stuff, if a dog, whether it be young or old, got split off, that dog was kind of on its own. Like you can go out and look and call and this and that, but there's got to be a little element of luck there for you to find that dog, and hopefully it comes back. Maybe it doesn't. When that happens now, we've got a whole lot better chance of finding that dog, or even preventing that dog from getting to a busy road, a highway, something like that it doesn't need to be on. Or even with the maps that we have these days with OnX and all these other options for maps, we can see on the landscape in real time where we're at, where the dogs are at. And with private land, forest land, all that stuff so chopped up as it is these days, it's not like you can just run your dog wherever you want and you're going to be legal. You have to be paying attention and know where the property lines are, where you are, where your dogs are. And so that's something I always like to explain is, yes, I get to see where these dogs are as long as I'm close enough to them. But part of that is maintaining, legality on what I'm doing. I don't want to be trespassing. I don't want my dogs to be trespassing. I like to be very respectful as a hunter, and I don't want my dogs running through somebody's place that doesn't want them there, right? Like that's not fair to them. It's not fair to my dogs. My dogs don't know no property.
They don't
lines.
know boundaries, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the way that mountain lions are managed, you want to keep your dog in the area that you're actually pursuing a lion in, because if it was to cross the road or cross some drainage, that might be another geographical area, another big game management unit that could be part of a different quota. It could be part of a different ability to harvest in those locations, correct?
Yeah, 100%. And there's a lot of those locations we hunt that are right on that line. And the GMU line, and we've got to know about all those things, the quotas, what's open, what's not, where we can hunt, where we can't. So having those tools available now prevents so many issues that would be a big problem without them.
Can you retrieve your dogs?
Oh, absolutely. All my dogs specifically, and as far as I know, everybody trains their dogs this way, is these collars have a feature where you can push a button to make the collar beep when that you train those dogs, when that collar beeps, they turn around and come right back to you. And they do it a lot by scent. They'll follow their own scent back to the last place they know you were at. And so, I've done it. I've done examples like on my ranch. I'm on the plain, so it's pretty flat. I can be miles away from my dogs and recall them. And it's not terribly hard to teach them either. Like, for whatever reason, it's fairly instinctive. They're like, okay, I don't know what that beep means, but I'm going to go back to my dad.
And I do that with Jack Russells. I use Jack Russells on our business side for the nuisance side.
Yeah.
And they'll get into a location, maybe it's after something at somebody's property or somebody's house or in a warehouse or whatever, and I get to a position where I don't feel comfortable with it. And I know that snake is underneath those pallets or whatever. The dog has found it. Now I need to recall the dog.
Yep.
And it's easy to be able to turn around and do that without screaming and hollering and beating on the drums to to get the dog to come back. People are amazed that, how did he know to come back? Because you just tone it. The dog hears it, but the people that are standing with you don't.
Yeah.
And the dog comes back and sits next to you, and they're like, those are the most well-trained dogs I've ever seen in my entire life. Well, but like you say, it's something that they want to do. They get a kick out of this game back and forth that and I know the hound side of it. I put the collars on my dogs, and they're all excited because they know they're going to work and they're going outside, and they get to turn around and go with me. And it's part of this. It's like their uniform. You put it on, and I think they'd wear a helmet if I wanted them to. But it's fun to get them out there and let them be part of that, as long as they're well maintained and as long as they're well trained, because that's a safety part of the dog. But it's also respect for the wildlife that you're pursuing as well.
Yeah, 100%. And you mentioned recalling one because there's a danger there, or there's a snake or whatever. Surprisingly, on the hound side of things, you can do that from. You can tone them off a track. I mean, even as excited as they are when they're doing their job, they'll come back to you. And I've even toned them off a tree, if they've got something.
When they've got something to tree.
Yeah, say they tree right across a boundary and I couldn't stop them before they got there, but I'm not legal to go there. I'm going to tone those dogs and they'll come right back to me. No harm, no foul. So it's very cool to see a dog that listens like that. And you're right. They hear that jingle of those collars, and it's like, Pavlov's response. As their mouth starts drooling over food, they hear those collars, and they're like, all right, time to play.
And anybody that's been around bird dogs, waterfowl dogs, or any sort of pursuit dog, to see the excitement that those guys, the dogs have, and how they interact and work off of each other. Whether you've got pointers, or whether you got flushers, or whether you got retrievers, or whatever, it's neat to see that back and forth, because you're allowing them to take advantage of what they've been put on this earth to do, and I think that people that don't understand that need to understand that my dog will not go chase a frisbee, but your dog won't go chase a snake.
Yeah.
And my dog, he'll chase a ball, but the ball is more of a treat than it is anything else. It's not a need. We don't go to the park to throw the ball. We do the ball just like they do on drug dogs or anything else. You find the snake, you get the ball. Okay,
Yep.
well, I'm going to go find the snake because I know the snake's going to bite my ass. I don't want to turn around and do that, so I want to come back and get the ball. The dogs that you've got are trained athletes. I mean, people think that hounds are maybe malnourished because of their stature. You might see ribs, you might see shoulder blades or whatever. These are well-trained long-distance athletes. And the thing that I would compare them to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when you get cross-country runners, they're not all bulked up. They don't have a bunch of baggage they're carrying around like what I do at this point in time. But dogs are well-trained athletes, and you train them to make sure they're capable of doing what their job is, just like what your team members are on the bull riding circuit.
100%, and that's you kind of summed it up there with what they're passionate about and everything. Like I've always thought that our passion reveals our purpose in life. And the dogs are the same way. So if my job is to be able to give them all the tools to do their job really well, and if I'm feeding them way too much and I've got a fat, overweight dog, he cannot live to his fullest potential. It's going to be terrible for him. Mm-hmm. Just like anything, you take a person that's way overweight, life is harder for them. Mm-hmm. So my job is to give them the tools that they need to succeed. So they're getting great feed, the stuff that keeps them with enough fat, enough protein, enough, all the other macro and micronutrients and stuff they need to be at their optimal. But you're right. They're not going to be your Arnold Schwarzenegger in the mountains. They're going to be your Usain Bolt. And that's what makes them, effective and keeps them healthy. You get an overweight dog running around the mountains, he's not going to hold up. And vice versa. You get an underweight dog in the mountains, he's not going to have the endurance. And I've heard people say, oh, well, they feed their dog or they starve their dogs. That's how they get them to hunt. I don't know about you, but
no,
I've never seen a starving dog that wanted to hunt. They want to find anything they can to eat, and they're not going to run for miles to do it. They're going to go to the nearest pile of crap and go eat that.
People's perceptions on things that we've seen, especially over the last 2 years and based upon what we've had to deal with for the lies and fallacies and falsehoods that I constantly talk about. When you got animal rights extremists that are trying to convince an unknowing general, uneducated public about what they want them to try to believe, they will say whatever. What they don't want is they don't want the facts and the data from the people that do it. They don't want the facts and the data from the scientists, the managers, the game managers. They don't like when their lies are countered, because the lies are countered with truths. And if somebody doesn't want to hunt, I fully understand that. I'm not trying to convince them of that. But if you want to learn about somebody's profession and somebody's livelihood and the facts and the statistics that go along with it, the best thing to do is turn around and talk to the people that do it.
100%.
Houndsmen as a whole are the most respected individuals in the hunting community because of what they do for the dogs themselves. You guys are dog people. I mean, I say this all the time that, have you been hound hunting? Well, you give the impression that you're hunting hounds. No, you're using hounds to hunt. But when people see the passion that's driven and the caring from houndsmen themselves, it's pretty remarkable to see how that light bulb kind of switches over to where they start to recognize and understand. Hound season for lions goes from late November to March 31st. What the heck do you do with those dogs from March 31st until the next season starts?
It's year round, man. It's year round. And I'm not saying hunting year round. Obviously, we can't do that because of regulations and other biological reasons. But my dogs, I can't speak for everybody, but I've got the ranch at home. We got cattle every day. I'm out checking cows, checking fence, checking waters, all the different things that need to happen on, a couple thousand acres. I collar up those dogs and they come with me. They get exercise. They get handled, what we're talking about with the toning and the handle and making them nice dogs that are fun to be around. That's a daily thing. And it's just constant handling of them.
You got to give them something to do for 7-8 months.
Yeah. These dogs, you can't stick them in a pen and expect them to just have all this purpose and desire and no outlet for it. So even though when we're out checking cows, they may not be able to, go smell a lion or a bobcat or anything like that, but they're out, they're using their nose and checking things out and realizing.
And probably looking at things that you don't want them to look at.
Yeah. And it's good to make sure that you reinforce we're not out here to chase deer. We're not out here to chase coyotes. We're not out here to chase cows. And it's not hard to break them of that. You just remind them that, hey, that's not what we're here for most of the time. A simple tone. When my puppies think they want to go investigate a cow a little too close, with a little tone, and they come back to me, and a couple times they're like, all right, I won't go check out that cow no more. So that's one thing about, I enjoy it, but it's also so much different than like rifle hunting or something, right? Like I can go out and scout a couple weeks before season. I can shoot my rifle for, 5 or 6 times and know she's dialed in, and then I can go hunt. I've got a handful of hours in it, but I've got hours every single day of the year with the dogs, but I enjoy that connection. I do. And
your dogs, I mean, you're gone quite a bit. You don't have a problem with leaving your dogs home with the wife and the kids and making sure that everything's taken care of. And there might be some butt chewing at some point in time, but I mean, they're part of the family. Everybody knows everybody, and everybody knows what everybody's expectations and allowances are, I guess. Yeah,
and the kids love taking care of them. My daughters, they name the dogs, and they like to go out and feed them, especially now with the puppies that we got. I don't allow dogs in my house unless something's hurt or
Right.
there's a legitimate reason for him to come in. I don't need 10 house dogs.
No, I don't think anybody does.
No, but I got this pup the other day that the girls have just fallen in love with, and gosh darn it, every night that thing's in the house now. And so I'm mainly the one doing the butt chewing now. Like, hey, get that dog out. But
you know, when you're gone, that dog is probably in the house.
Oh, I know it all the time. But they do. They really like it, and I usually get in trouble from my daughters. You know, when I have a dog that I sell or give away to like a young houndsman that's getting a start or something. My girls are always not happy that one had to go away, even though there's a dozen more sitting there.
You got any other type of dogs?
I got a stray dog.
Yeah,
it's a Mexican dog. I found out when you'll get a kick out of this story. So when Trump got elected the first time, my wife finds this stray dog. She's like, hey, this dog was on the road. I threw it in the truck and I'm bringing it home. I'm like, no, look, leave it alone. Like, get it off the road, and whoever owns it will be around for it. I'm sure it lives there somewhere. Yeah, long story short, she found the owner and lived a couple miles away, brought it back to him. And let me back up just a little bit. That was right before Trump got elected. Well, then Trump gets elected and this dog shows back up at our house. And I was like, all right, well, take that dog back to the owner. So she takes it back, and they're like, well, no, when Trump got elected, he went back to Mexico because he thought he was going to get deported. And he left this dog tied to a tree, and it's just been tied to this tree, and somebody's been feeding it, and it slipped its collar and came back to us.
Really?
Yeah. And so my wife's, that now she's like, oh, we got to keep it. So I'm like, all right, whatever. So we've had this stray dog now since Trump's first term. So
good dog.
Yeah, she's fine. She's not useful for much, but the reason I say she's a Mexican dog is because she didn't know any commands, right? And then I was like, well, that guy that owned her was a Mexican guy, right? I'm like, let's try Spanish. And we started speaking Spanish to her, and she knew Spanish.
Really?
Yeah. So it's kind of funny. She's always out on patrol. She's kind of the girl's dog.
Has she learned English, or she still speaks Spanish?
I think she's bilingual now.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I had to guess. But yeah, the girls love her, and she's not too much trouble. So. And
your girls are into hunting.
They are, yeah. My oldest is more into hunting than my youngest. I hope I didn't ruin my youngest, but we took her, when she was 8, I think. 7 or 8 on her first lion hunt, and it was kind of rough.
Was it?
It was just a really long, steep hike, and even like where the lion went to, if I had to pick, I would have never brought my kids there. It was kind of dangerous, rocky stuff, and we really had to be slow and careful. But my youngest was just like, my legs hurt so bad, I'm so tired, yada yada. I'm like, well, we can't quit, right? And that's the thing about it, you can't quit. So anyhow, she likes to go, but if it's a little more tame.
It's on her terms.
Yeah. But my oldest, she's a go-getter. She'll go wherever.
Now, is that Sheridan?
Sheridan, yep. Sheridan and Odessa.
And Sheridan helped us out on some of the campaign stuff, and both of the girls are just peaches. I mean, they're just smart girls, and great spokeswomen. I mean, you could just tell that they were raised right, and you could tell that they actually care about what they're talking about and what they're engaged in. So it's really cool to see that. Well,
I appreciate that. I'm glad you got to see that part of them. There's plenty more.
I would imagine. I saw both of them at the Capitol down there at the rally on October 18th too, and they just looked like they were really proud to be part of it because their dad and their mom both found value in it, and it was just nice to see that sort of family network.
Yeah, and they really do. They were really involved in that stuff. If they could have done more than they can, what they could do as kids, they sure would have.
Now, are they homeschooled?
Yeah, we homeschool, and then they also go to like this little private co-op deal for some of the other homeschool kids around there. That's like a 1 or 2 day a week deal.
And they're doing rodeo too.
Yep. They rodeo. My oldest used to do jiu-jitsu actually too. It was kind of fun watching her kick some boys' asses when she was doing those competitions. And then my youngest is an amazing artist as well. So she's, they kind of, they're so unique in what they like, but at the end of the day, it's still rodeo, outdoors, ranch life.
And then your wife's a photographer.
Yep.
And a videographer or whatever, I guess.
Yeah, she started as a hobby for her, and she got really good at it, and so now it's become a job.
Good for her. And And you guys get a chance to do a little bit of traveling with the business type of stuff and family type of outreach and spending time together?
Yeah, we get to travel enough. I to be honest with you, I'm sour on travel. Like, I've spent my whole life traveling, and if I get a chance to stay at home, I do, with the exception of if it's the time to go get the dogs out. But as far as getting on a plane and traveling like that, we kind of try to avoid it. But, we get to go around it and just talk with friends and family and stuff around parts of the state, and that's good for us.
When you got into lion hunting, did you think that it was ever going to be bastardized like it's become?
I never would have dreamed it, man.
What do you think changed? What do you think changed in the mentality of people and how we ended up to where we're at today?
I think the fact that it's misunderstood and not very well widely known, not only on how we do it, but why we do it. It's been a disconnect, right, from our traditional roots and how we've managed wildlife in this country to almost like this new age stuff of people giving human qualities to animals and starting to relate to them that way. And I just got done saying my dogs are like my family, right? But they're still dogs. And I feel like that line is starting to get blurred a lot in the state and in the country.
Like it happens in the wild, like it does in your bedroom or in the kennel or something.
Yeah.
I mean, dogs start to pick up human traits just as horses start to respond to human activity, and just as cows or bulls, like what you're talking about, because of that human interaction. Wildlife, for the most part, doesn't do that unless it's been held in captivity in some degree. And I think that when people try to anthropomorphize wildlife to where these human type qualities, and they sit and watch 60 Minutes and PBR bull riding, that's so far from the case. But people look at a mountain lion to supposedly have the same personality, or a wolf to have the same personality as what their poodle does or what their cat does. And I think that that's where we've drawn the line in so many different levels. One, because people don't know where their food comes from. They don't know how wildlife is managed. They don't know where their water comes from. They don't know what it takes to be able to survive in the human race. They know it's there. It's just like it's there in some magic button. You flip a light on and everything just works. If you had the ability to be able to explain to somebody of why you hunted then compared to why you hunt now, that hasn't changed. It's the same reasons. But being able to explain to them has been a different concept because the society has changed wholeheartedly, has it not?
Yeah, 100%. The change in society has directly translated to the change in attitude towards hunting in general and hound hunting specifically. I think that you're 100% right when that disconnect between people knowing how they get their food and their water and how things work. In this country, we're really spoiled, right? Like, if you want anything, you can pay somebody to provide it for you. And that has created this big void where there's such a lack of knowledge. And, I think some of the best things, and I'm going to take my kids to do it sometime, is, I've been to Guatemala. I've seen the poorest of the poor and how they live. They know exactly how to survive. And granted, we're not in survival mode in the U.S., but knowing how to survive, I think is critical for all people, and understanding that, like, this is what's important in life and this isn't. And most of what we're wrapped up in this country is vanity.
Exactly.
It really is.
Yeah. When my son was 8, we took him to Africa, and he went over with like $263 of his own money because he was selling some products out of our store. And if you took him to Walmart at that time with $263, he'd have figured out some way to turn around and spend it on something because he had money in his pocket. But we went to Africa, and we were in country for 21 days, and we went to 3 different countries. And he came home with like $218.
Really?
And he saw kids over there that had nothing, that they had a tire as a toy to play with, or that didn't wear underwear, and he was forced to change underwear. And him being able to see what other countries and other cultures and other societies had or didn't have brought him up to a point to where now he does a lot of things on his own right now, and he's 33 years old, and he buys what he wants when he wants and always has a purpose for it. But he doesn't buy things he doesn't need. And there's something to be said about what we have in this country is a privilege. It's not a right. It's a privilege. We need to be able to turn around and protect the rights while we're enhancing the privileges. But I think that when the general public that doesn't know about certain things like what we had to explain or go through on Prop 127, when you can get them to come to your side of the fence by logic and by reason and by facts and data and science and statistics, it's easier for them to actually apply that into the next level of what they're living on a daily basis. Christina and I talked about Ordinance 308 and Ordinance 309. They might not have cared about 127, but they could compare 127 to, wait a minute, I like to wear a cowboy hat, or wait a minute, I like to go fishing, or I like to go to the Indian market, or I like to eat lamb meat. You started to affect people's lives, and I think being able to explain that to people through one segment or the other of what we do for recreation and for management and sustainability in our livelihoods is something that I don't know, do you think that we're missing out on the education side in the schools, in the colleges, as adults? Because it doesn't seem like it seems like we're hitting the right places. We're just not hitting them frequently enough.
Yeah, and we're kind of being reactive on that, right? Like this is a deal that snuck up on us. That we knew there was a disconnect, but we didn't know how big it was, and now we're seeing the results of that. So I do think we can be more proactive on younger, educating people younger, whether that's schools, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, stuff like that. That's something we're trying to do in UHC, United Houndsmen of Colorado, is being more proactive in that outreach stuff, because you provide the facts and the science and the why. It's easy to understand, but that comes through communication, and if we're not providing that communication, they're not going to come to us to find it, right? Like that's just not, it's not going to happen. You're
the vice president of United Houndsmen of Colorado, correct?
That's correct.
And are you also doing something on a national level?
Yeah, so I got a few irons in the fire there. I'm part of another group that we're just getting rolling now, the National Houndsman Association, to kind of unify everybody, right? Like there's different states and groups all over the country, but we've seen now, we've got to be more unified. And in what you've done, have provided a lot of that example for us to be able to, realize that, all right, we got to get our ducks in a row a little bit better if we want to continue to make progress. So that's exciting for us. And then also part of another group called the Professional Wildlife Working Dogs, which is specifically, we 100% support hunting, wildlife management, all that stuff. But the professional working dog side is specifically geared towards research studies and conflict minimization or conflict prevention before it starts. And that goes right into the hazing study that recently come out of Washington. That was done in part by this group. And so it's just there's some more stuff being done there on that side of things to really show hounds have a benefit beyond just hunting and wildlife management, but also conflict prevention. And the best way that can happen, right, is we prevent livestock from being lost, from human life from being lost, and from unnecessary wildlife loss.
What was that studied out in Washington? What they find?
It's called, the study based out of Washington is called the efficacy of adverse conditioning in lions.
Efficacy of adversity and conditioning in lions.
Is that what it is?
I think. I don't know.
I can pull it up.
I'm just asking you.
Well, I've got it here. I keep it handy so I can send it out to people. But it was a 4-year study that Bart George did. And,
And coincidentally enough, they did it in Washington.
Yep.
Where they don't have hounds for pursuit of game pursuit, but they use hounds for conflict minimization.
Yeah, Washington lost their hound hunting to ballot initiative, and since then they've had tremendous wildlife conflict. Mm-hmm. It's not hard to put 2 and 2 together there of how why that happened, and so now they can't use hounds to hunt lions, but they use them to catch problem lions, and those lions get killed and thrown in the dump. And I hate to even say that because it's such a disrespect to the animal, but that is the policy and what happens when you start screwing around with stuff that is the most effective way to manage wildlife.
Well, and they did that here in an attempt on 127 to turn around and take it away from the conservation-minded sportsmen and the scientists within the agency to manage it. But then there was provisions about human health and safety, protection of private property and livestock. Oh, but we'll let you turn around and utilize wildlife services or a professional government agency to be able to turn around and go out and do that. Where right now we're in a point to where we're doing things so effectively, so efficiently, based upon the facts and the data and the statistics that have been compiled over the last 55 or 60 years. Why would you want to change that? And what we're trying to prevent is things from happening like what they did in Washington or Oregon or California, where they just completely banned everything. Do you have? Go ahead and pop that up if you got it.
Yeah, I got it. This is just came out literally like 2 months ago. Evaluating the efficacy of adverse conditioning of mountain lions with hounds.
And that's by Bart George out of Washington.
Yeah, it was Bart George's study. And this article is in the Canadian Wildlife Biology and Management Journal.
How long did that study go on?
This was a 4-year study. And the reason it came about is because they did it with the Kalispel tribe up there. It wasn't a state-run deal. It was with
Colville?
Colville,
yeah.
It wasn't a state-run deal. It was with the tribe, and they were just having so much conflict. You know, they were killing hundreds of lions, and as former houndsman, or as a houndsman, I shouldn't say former, but Bart realized that there's a connection here between all the rise in conflict we've had and the lack of the use of hounds. And so that's what they got with the tribe and wanted to do the study. And granted, he works for the tribe, so it was pretty easy to talk him into it. But they started this study and they collared, X amount of lions, and they had a controlled group and a study group. And through their hazing efforts, they showed without a doubt that you can condition lions to avoid people. And not only that, there's another study that's not even related to this one that came out end of last year that was studying the dispersal habits of juvenile lions, as they leave their mothers. And they had a study area in California where you can't hunt them, you can't use hounds, they're off limits. And then a study area in Nevada, which obviously allows hunting and allows the use of hounds. And they showed in that study as well that the lions from the hunted population avoided people, even though these lions, they hadn't been hazed specifically for that purpose, but they avoided people in developed areas, whereas the lions in California did not.
Pretty telltale-ing, isn't it?
It is.
Or damning to some degree, depending on who looks at it. But
yeah, and this is the type of information, though, that like if you're going to be able to, say, vote on this type of thing that people should understand. And unfortunately, like you said, with what we faced with 127, the opposition, the people that don't agree with what we do, they don't want you to hear that type of stuff. They want you to hear, the cherry-picked information, but the information is power, and when we share that and when we get it out there, I think it's easy for people to see the truth and make the right choice.
When we were going through 127, did you have reservations during the entire process about how things were laying out and how we were trying to build up the message and where we were going, or did you just kind of figure anything's got to be better than nothing compared to what the antis were doing?
Yeah, this process in the past year with 127, it was a really good learning experience for me, and especially being able to, be involved with it and learn from you and everything, because this is a new landscape for me, and I'm somewhat ashamed to say that, because at this point in my life, I should have been involved more than I have been. Not making excuses. I didn't know how to get involved, but I think from my perspective, I knew that I knew enough to know I didn't know enough, and I needed to keep my mouth shut and my eyes and ears open and learn. And far from where I want to be or am gonna be, but I feel like myself, I was fairly content to follow a guy I knew had experience and had success doing this. And so I don't think everybody felt that way. You know,
No,
emotions get high and people get worried and start getting stressed, and that's life. But for me personally, I felt like we were in good hands the whole time.
Well, I appreciate that, and it was a team effort. I mean, you know, getting you guys on board was a growing experience as well, as far as the United Houndsmen. But at the same time, we were in the same boat together. There was a hole in the bottom of the boat, and we had to decide who was going to either plug the hole or who was going to bail, and who was going to be able to row to get to shore. Because when we looked at the entire coalition that we had already established, not all of them were on the same page about the hound hunting, about the trapping, which in this state is cage trapping only. But we had to educate our own guys, our own rank and file, the sportsmen and women, the licensed purchasing sportsmen and women of Colorado. We had to educate them that they were part of our cause because of the language that was based in 127 and how you could turn around and take, you know, elk or bighorn sheep, like we said many, many times, or mallard ducks or coyotes, and put into place because they wanted to turn around and bastardize what we did as trophy hunting. When you looked at things as things were playing out from the beginning to the end, do you ever consider yourself a trophy hunter?
I never have in my life. When I think trophy hunting, honestly, I think of poaching. Like that's what, and I think that's what a lot of people think. And so that's why when they tried to use that term trophy hunting, it was a broad label of poaching, that these guys are doing this for one reason and one reason only. They're trying to tell me what my motive is for doing something they don't even remotely understand. I don't consider, we can get into the whole trophy hunting deal and even why that's a word, and how Boone and Crockett Club tried to create this deal where we were harvesting mature animals towards the end of their life and not the young that were reproducing and you know, being the biological engine for the species. That's a whole nother deal, but I've just never considered myself a quote unquote trophy hunter under the current definition of the anti-hunting.
So if Kody Lostroh ended up harvesting an exceptional elk or an exceptional mountain lion, if you would turn around and try to tell somebody of what you harvested and how much time and effort and endurance went into that, and maybe the scouting and maybe just the training and all the other stuff, you harvested something that was so exceptional that it should be classified in the books as a trophy. Do you see that as a bad negative connotation, or do you think that that's a successful accomplishment that has been maybe misinformed or misguided or misrepresented?
No, I think that's what it is. When you've done that, and that's our definition of trophy, right? Mm-hmm. The people that actually are the hunters of the trophy is like you put in the effort and held back, you know, you showed restraint on all of these other animals that you could have legally taken because you had a standard, you had whatever that you were after.
And threshold that you wanted to try to beat, or that you saw something that tickled your fancy. Yeah.
And the fact is those animals they didn't get big by mistake. Like that is the most difficult animal to hunt. Mm-hmm. And that term trophy hunting has been hijacked by the anti-hunting crowd to make it into a bad thing. And I guess that's where my position is not considering myself a trophy hunter is I'm just not going to associate with what they are trying to put on me. But when we're talking in the context of hunters and what we do, yeah, when you go out there and say you get a quote unquote trophy animal, that is the hardest animal on the landscape to hunt. And a person should be proud of their accomplishment and the effort that took to get that. But that's not the only thing that mattered in that hunt.
Well, were you a trophy bull rider?
There's some trophy bull riders out there, I'll tell you that much. You know, I did that because the same reason I hunt is because I love it. I loved to do what I do, and I'd have done it for no money.
You're challenging yourself for an accomplishment that you said it early on in the conversation about making the decision to turn around and pursue something because it was driven into you. It became part of your inner being.
Yeah, that's this is getting big now, but what inspires people, right, is people that have done exceptional things, that pushed past perceived limits and done out of the ordinary things. And that's what drove me in riding bulls. It was to do something so extreme and so hard and be good at it. And that's what drives me in hunting too. And it's sometimes it is easy. You get lucky sometimes, and it's easy. There's no other way to put it. But 95% of the time, it's very, very challenging. And that's what I enjoy most about it. And that's why I do devote so much time to this, and why I devoted so much time to riding bulls. It's a love for everything that encompasses that activity.
Did you ever think in the process of us getting involved with each other on this 127 venture, would it take as much in your mind from the commission and the legislature and all the stuff that I was trying to get you guys involved in? And we were talking about a ballot initiative that didn't have anything to do with these other two things, because this was the general public deciding on the outcome. But did you ever think that it was this complicated, but at the same time this simple, to be able to just turn around and voice our concerns and bring our constituency perspectives to, the dialogue? Did you ever think that you'd be in this position?
No. No, that's a simple answer. Golly, it's more complicated and more simple than I expected. When we first started doing all this stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's just so much I don't know, and all the things. And now that I understand the process and everything better, it is quite a bit more simple. But at the end of the day, and I've told you this, like, I don't always feel like I'm the best guy for the job, or maybe ever. If it's whatever that reason is, I always feel like, man, there's somebody smarter, there's somebody with more experience, there's somebody that could do better. But at the end of the day, somebody's got to do it, right? Mm-hmm. And if it's not getting done, step up. And that's what I told my wife when we were fighting all of the stuff with 127 for the last year. She's like, gosh, you got to go do this again or that again. And I'm like, Kenneth, the only way I know how to win is to put everything I've got into something. Like, I wasn't a gifted, talented bull rider. I had to work my tail off to get to that point. And all I know is I can outwork you. And if that's what it takes to beat this, that's what I'm going to do. Because I know I'm not the smartest guy. I know I'm not the most experienced guy. But I know what I can do is show up and put in the effort. And I'm glad.
It's interesting you say that, because I'm not the smartest, and I'm not the best looking, and I ain't got the most money.
You got the best beard though.
Well, it's a beard anyway. I got one thing going for me, but nobody's going to outwork me when it comes to the stuff that I'm passionate about. I might not win, but you're not going to outwork me. And I think that seeing what you and Justin and a lot of your crew brought to the table, and who stood up. You weeded the big dogs off the porch and found out who was actually going to get out and run. And the thing I appreciate about you and Justin, United Houndsmen, and those guys is the value that you brought to the table, but also the willingness to learn through the process of something that was foreign to you, because you came in, with wide eyes, greenhorns to some degree on the political side. You knew everything you needed to know about the Hounds side of it, but we weren't talking to each other. We needed to be able to talk to people that didn't know where I came from or you came from, but had to understand why we provided value for them, even though they didn't pursue or engage in what we were trying to get them to understand. And I think that was the elk hunters, the bighorn sheep hunters, and the waterfowl hunters, the non-hunters. And I doubt that we've got any anti-hunters that actually came on our side. But I bet we got people that voted for 114 to come on our side, and that's proven in the data and the statistics based upon the facts that we were able to distribute. I owe a lot of that to you guys willing to be able to turn around and take some of the punches for what we were trying to do, because there was a lot of people that came and said, oh, we need to do this and we need to do that and we shouldn't be doing this. But they were looking at it from a houndsman perspective, not from a messaging perspective, to be able to talk to a non-hunting target voter audience. And it was a pleasure to be able to work through all that. I wish we didn't have to do any of it, and I'm thinking we're probably going to have to do some more of it at the commission or at the legislature. But if you had a piece of advice, Kody, I mean, you're well known in the ag industry and the bull riding, the rodeo industry, and the hounding industry. If you had a couple pieces of advice to give to anybody that's listening to this from around the country that thinks, oh, it can't happen to me. They're not going to go after coon hunting. They're not going to go after javelinas. They're not going to go after upland waterfowl. If they're not going to go after bighorn sheep. If you had anything to say based upon what you've seen over the course of the last 15, 16 months and how you've lived this life over the last, 15, 20, 30 years, what would you say to them about how they should prepare, how they should take something serious?
Well, that's a great, great question. And I think that attitude of it'll never happen to me is exactly how you lose. It's been shown. I mean, we can look back in pretty recent history on things that people said, well, that'll never happen. And next thing you know, it happens. And that's the fact that the people aren't prepared. And you actually gave me this advice, and so I give you the credit, but look 5 years ahead, look 10 years ahead at how the landscape can and will change, and prepare for that. Because if we are caught flat-footed and without you and CRWM, we as a Hounds organization, we would have been caught flat-footed because we weren't prepared. We had the attitude of I don't think it's going to happen here. I hope it doesn't happen here. And without you and CRWM, we'd have lost. And so my advice to these other places, other organizations, is get your head out of the sand and prepare. And that's what it's going to take. And it's just what it sucks to say, but that's what it's going to take. Like, you have to be prepared to fight, because the other side is preparing, and they're always scheming and plotting and strategically doing things 5-10 years in advance that if we're not doing, we're going to get our butts kicked.
Yeah, and nothing could be further from the truth when people say that it's not going to happen to me. It's not going to happen for what I want to do and what I pursue. It doesn't matter what state. It doesn't matter what species. It doesn't matter what method of take. It doesn't matter unless you make it matter. And I think that people that have reached out to us since the victory in November of 24 and said, well, we want to do what you guys did. What should we do? And I'm like, well, do you have an association? No. Do you have any money? No. Do you know who your enemies are? No. Do you know who your representative senators are? No. Okay, you got to start somewhere. And so the roadmap and the playbook that we've helped build is not bulletproof, but it is something that organizations and entities and particular endeavors that people want to engage in, they need to pay attention to the victory. Everybody wants to emulate a victor. I mean, we talked about this earlier. Everybody's trying to figure out how to emulate the Kansas City Chiefs. Before it was at one point the Denver Broncos for a short period of time, but it was always the New England Patriots. We have to figure out a way to emulate what we've got, and I'm not just talking about just here in Colorado, but listen to guys that have lived it, breathed it, have had to turn around and dedicate their entire life to it. Because if you don't want to do that, you need to prepare for the inevitable, because the inevitable is at your door. And, we dealt with a wolf deal in 2020 in Colorado that everybody said would not pass. And it did, because not everybody came together. Everybody came together on 127, nationwide, regionally, statewide, organizationally. Didn't matter what method of take or pursuit or avocation or organization, but they came together, and we defeated what I consider to be a very formidable enemy. But as you can see, what they're already doing in Arizona, what they're already doing in New Mexico, what they're trying to do again here, what they're trying to go back to Washington and Oregon, what they've already instituted in Wyoming, what they want to do in other eastern states, they're not happy with anything. But what our side needs to understand is a victory for us is a money-making opportunity for them. When they lose, they get support because they put up a hell of a fight. They turn around and really came to the table. They really rallied the troops. Now, we didn't win, but we need your help to get more money to be able to turn around and go back to the well. On our side, more often than not, our guys go, we won. Now we're in the clear. We're not preparing for the inevitable again. The thing that I want to tell people, and I think that you, with a bull riding experience of a couple thousand bulls underneath your belt, you fell off how many times to turn around and win what you won. But it doesn't mean that you were unbeatable. You could always turn around and get knocked down. So, I mean, if you, with a couple closing statements, if you had a recommendation to give somebody of how to get engaged and how to start the process from your perspective as a houndsman, as a bull rider, a world champion bull rider, what would you say to somebody that's trying to figure out what steps to take?
Yeah, the first step is the hardest one. It is any time we step out of our comfort zone. And so my word of advice is to take that first step, make that call, make that outreach to somebody who is involved, who knows, who has experience. Don't ask Joe Blow at the gas station. Pick your mentors wisely, but take that first step, because once you do that, it may seem daunting, but it'll start to come into the big picture. And I don't have the experience and knowledge that you do, but I know that being able to be quote unquote mentored or being able to tag along on the coattails of somebody that knows what's going on is going to help me in the future to prepare. It's going to help me prepare others. And that's what it's all about. We talked about outreach, talking to people, sharing information like that. This is part of that, is sharing the information, not just how to hunt, how to scout, how to do all these things, how to keep our life alive.
Good closing statements. And if it's all right with you, we'll put you on the queue to turn around and come back up, because there's some things that we'd like to get into, and maybe sooner than later, depending on what happens at the commission and through this legislative session. But not only are you a wealth of knowledge, you're a good spokesperson, and I think there's a lot of people in our industry on the hound side that really, they admire you, they respect you, and it'd be great to get you and Justin back in here and have a conversation from a UHC perspective. But you got any other closing statements you want to make before we wrap this up?
Well, I don't think so. You did a good job getting all the questions out in front of me, and I really enjoy being able to do this, because it's something that people need to hear and understand, that learning about the things we do and why we do it is knowledge, and that makes you able to make informed decisions, and keeps I hate to call them the enemy, but they are the enemy sometimes, the uninformed from showing up at your door and taking away your life just because they don't understand it.
Well, Kody, thanks again. Look forward to getting with you. And we got a couple things coming up in the next several weeks that we're going to be working together on. But look forward to the future conversations and locking arms and saying that we're actually on the same team as opposed to on the opposite forces. But Kody Lostroh, appreciate it. And thank you very much. And look forward to the future.
Thanks a bunch. Appreciate you having me on.
You bet.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Through the Gates. For more content like this, make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe on all of our channels.